Hey, this is Carl, also known as Zarepath from the Custom Magic community, and I'm back with another custom standard set review. Today we're going to be looking at Scriptures of Urshad by, it says Aura Warrior, but I just know him as Matt in the custom Discord. Uh, but it is, this set actually has a set details on Plane Sculptors. It's a top-down set themed around ancient Babylon and the surrounding lands, drawing heavy inspiration from the Cradle of Civilization archetype and the stories and heroes of the early Bible and Old Testament. So it's kind of a unique and interesting mythological flavor. And we'll just look at the mechanics real quick. Civilized, um, if you control an artifact, a creature, and an enchantment, you've achieved civilization. And there are mechanics that help support both having artifacts and enchantments. There's some colored artifacts in the set, as well as treasure tokens. So that helps outside. Enchantments, there's actually an enchantment mechanic, which is pretty neat, which we'll look at. I kind of like the feeling of, just assembling your set, collecting your set, and upgrading like that, and it matches the flavor well. So I think Civilized is an interesting mechanic. It can work well with other sets in an interesting way, like with the petals of Araloo, or the all the artifacts in Metropolis, Doharum, or Festum. And then the enchantments, Araloo has enchantments as well. So none of those sets are in Custard right now, but as more sets get into Custard, I could see Civilized getting more and more interesting at a constructed level. And this being instant speed, exile removal, and you gain life is, a sweet payoff for that hoop. Endure is kind of the aggressive creature mechanic. When it attacks, you can pay its endure cost to put a counter on it if it didn't already have a counter on it. So kind of similar to Adapt with that restriction, except, has to be attacking for you to do it, and it only puts one on. My problem with Endure is that the triggers, they just read weird to me. I don't think it's the right name for the mechanic, because I'm not sure exactly what it's trying to illustrate, like it's enduring the wilderness or the wilds or something. But endure isn't often used as an intransitive verb, which is like this phrase here: whenever a creature you control endures. That's when you use it intransitively. If you say what it's enduring, then it's operating as a transitive verb. And sorry to nerd out a little bit on this, but this is just explaining why it reads a little off to say whenever a creature you control endures. And in your head, you're expecting that it's enduring a specific thing. Like, enduring what? So I would look to change the name of that. But I approve of the mechanic. I had a similar mechanic in one of the designer drafts I did, except it was just the first time it attacks, put a counter on it. It wasn't an optional thing, and you didn't have to pay mana for it. Okay, discoveries. So this is the enchantment mechanic I was talking about. They're pretty neat. The flavor is really great. It's this, it kind of illustrates an ascending civilization and basic pillars of civilization, things like conscription and architecture and writing. So they have these kind of one word, very resonant names, and then the designs match very well. They're just like, gosh, what was I gonna say? What are they called? The Dominarium mechanic. They're not fables. They're not lore. I forget what they're called. Sagas. Okay, so just like sagas, except you don't sacrifice them at the end. It just becomes a static enchantment. So you got some recurring triggers on the early steps, and then a consistent enchantment later, which matches the flavor better, and I don't think is worse than sagas. So these will be fun. There's some interesting constructed build-arounds. This is like a tiny History of Benalia. It only costs 2 mana. It gives you a couple soldier creature tokens. But then you get to give +1/+1 each turn. So I could maybe see this in a token-focused deck, but probably not. that's okay. This is more for limited. Okay, I was thinking of just doing the cards on the primer because it was a pretty extensive primer. But one look through the set and I saw cards I wanted to talk about that weren't on the primer. So we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way and just go through. So architecture, this is counter synergies, which works with Endure and also with planeswalkers and things like that. So helps ramp up counters. If there's other sets in Custard that care sufficiently about counters, this would be good with that. The fact this only costs 1 mana and can be a pseudo um, doubling season as far as adding loyalty to your planeswalkers when they enter play, and as well as your creatures +1/+1 counters. I guess it's really not exactly close to doubling season, but it's a similar kind of effect. This might be a utility card in some counter-focused strategy. This is a 6 mana 5/5 flying vigilance, which feels a little bit like an intro pack rare. But you get an Ox anytime a land enters the battlefield. I feel like at 6 mana there's probably better things to do, but this is sufficiently strong. This all feels like trinket text, like getting free Ox each turn is a lot stronger than paying 4 mana and tapping 3 Ox to put counters on everything you have. Seems like a very slow, grindy thing when this is already attacking each turn with flying and vigilance. So I don't know that I like that bottom thing, but it's kind of strong. Okay, conscription we talked about. Matt mentioned this as a build around. I don't know if it quite gets there because in decks that want power 2 or less creatures, you generally don't want 3 mana 1/4s also, and to be paying 2 mana every time one enters play. Cycle of Creation is really awesome. It's a 6 mana board wipe of creatures, but the number of creatures that you destroy, each time you cast a spell, you get to bring a human back. So it's a really nice flavor, and it gives control decks a bit of a win condition. It's not really a win condition, but you can win with the tokens that you create from this. Like, it's not nothing. This is definitely a powerful effect. It's not just, destroy all creatures, gain a little bit of life, or one of those writers. Okay, epics. This is a 5-color cycle. Very modal spells. You can choose the number of times equal to X that you pay. And you can pick any of them. So you can use this to gain. Okay, let's say you cast this for 6 mana at instant speed. You can gain 8 life, not good. You can make 4 tokens, soldier tokens, which is okay. And you can bounce 4 things, or you can do some combination of that. I don't think this. Well, creating tokens at instant speed can be good. We know from what was it called? Settle the Wastes or something. It was X and a white instant speed create X soldier tokens. That card saw play. Adding 1 white and giving some flexibility, and the tokens have vigilance. If you consider this as the base mode, that's not bad. And then sometimes when you need it to gain life, or save some creatures, or save a creature that's being attacked, or targeted with a removal spell, and then make some soldiers, I could see this seeing play. Founding Hero, this is a huge reward for Civilization. And at first I was thinking, this is obviously too strong, but you think about the decks that want really great 2/1s for 1. They're also the decks that have a harder time justifying also playing artifacts and enchantments in the deck. They want to be really streamlined with their creatures and their reach. Like if Gift of the Dohar were still in the format, that would work out pretty well. Maybe this becomes a reason to run Conscription, because that would be an enchantment that gives you some tokens and gives you some ability to be aggressive. But it's an interesting build around. I don't know if the building around it becomes too easy to maintain your game plan and achieve Civilized, and therefore you just often have 2/1 double strikers. But you're not achieving it on turn 2, that's for sure. Although with 0-cost artifacts, maybe you are. I mean, I don't think there are any in this set, but Erelu has one and Metropolis has one. This is an interesting card that might have constructed ramifications. You can bounce a land you control at instant speed with this guy, and it has a fine body for what it does. I don't know what the implications of that are. Like, why would you want to bounce your land? Give you a little bit of ramp, but it's not really ramp, it's just regaining one of the mana that you spent to cast this. So then this becomes a 1 mana 2/1 flash, as long as you have something else at instant speed you want to do on their turn, which maybe that's the most common use of this. There's still a Flash Matters card in green in Hollows, and so maybe this would work with that to make Flash Matters, to make Flash matter in a deck. Or if you're worried about them removing your lands, I guess this is something you can do, but that seems like a more niche use than is likely. Okay. This is an aura that might see play in Boggles. Like, I think I'd run this as a 1 of in Boggles, maybe 2 of, just to give my Boggle flying and lifelink at the same time is really good. Because the issue with Boggles that prevents it from closing out games is like all the plant tokens or all of the mono red creatures that can just chump forever. And it doesn't have a good flying aura right now in the set, or in the deck. Legacy War Mask. This is a lot like Back in Action from Metropolis, except Back in Action is instant speed. This, you play the equipment, and then you get the creature, and it gets attached to the equipment, whereas Back in Action, you return the creature and create a token to attach to it. This, however, has a benefit of being something that can enter your graveyard and be returned from it with other artifact matters things, which Back in Action doesn't have. Malak of the Last Judgment is an angel, a male angel. That's a 5/5 flyer for 5 that basically means, its text basically says your opponent can't attack you anymore. Because if they do, this gets bigger, and if you have mana open, you can just destroy whatever they attacked you with. So this is a very strong mid-range threat, I think. If you play a sweeper on turn 4, they play a Screech or something, then you play this on 5, you're in great shape. Oh, tapper? Oh, it's a 2-mana tapper. Okay, the gods all transform, and I think they all have indestructible on the back ends, which makes them very appealing. This cares about counters, so it can slowly add counters itself on your tapped creatures, or it can just have synergy with counters generally, so like with Endure, things like that. And then you basically got a 4/4 indestructible for 3 mana. So this is a very, very powerful card. I would look at what cards add counters. I know white already has, like Bonfire Keeper, I think, at 1 white mana, puts a counter on something when you play it, and it has Hollow, so you can replay it after it dies. And then you have the 3-mana Prairie Tromper, which, if you have another creature when you play it, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I think this would slot into an interesting counters matter deck in white that would be fairly pushed. It is a legend, to be fair, but it's really good. So yeah, that's definitely a push card that would see play. When you play this, you can find aura or equipment. Huh. Ruler of Cities. For each enchanted land you control. Is enchanting lands a thing in this set? I didn't think it was. Kind of a weird card. So the 3-mana slot is really competitive just from this set, with the God. I guess this isn't that great unless you're in that deck. But Sign of Sinuria is very strong. It's a 2/3 flyer for 3, which is a okay rate. And then as long as you have another creature, it's a 3/4 flyer for 3, which is great. Like, that's fantastic. And then having lifelink with an enchantment and vigilance with an artifact. So this is basically civilized, right? Except broken down by modes. To give you a little more modal deck building with it. You don't have to have all 3, but you can see the appeal of having all 3. Which is pretty sweet. So definitely a strong card that would see play, in my opinion. This is the card we looked at earlier that has a really nice reward for achieving civilization. The exile is important with all the indestructible gods. Okay, stand against the gods. Create number of creatures you control. Oh, so this protects your board against board wipes, but it costs 5 mana, so that's not always ideal. But you also get to double up your creature count, which is pretty strong. There's more of returning creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. That might be too much of a theme, I don't know. But this is an enchantment that could go with the 2/1 double strike civilized card, as well as the artifact. I guess maybe it's okay they do the same thing. I think ideally you want the 2 cards that really push civilized into white-based aggro to be doing different things, as opposed to just the same thing, but it matters that one's an artifact and one's an enchantment. I don't know. But yeah, I like this design. I could see it seeing play. You get some of your creatures back after a wipe, and then they get stronger. Oh, water into wine. I like this design a lot. I think this could play well with Metropolis that really wants to gain lots of life. There's some white and green cards that really want you to gain a lot of life, not just because of supremacy, but because of things like Theos Artine that reward you for having twice as much life as an opponent. Aeronautics, you get to put counters on something, and then anything with counters have flying, and then they... Okay. It's probably a bit slow for constructed, but I appreciate it. There's Elemental Tribal in this set, which is a little strange. Oh, wow. 3/2 flyer that makes a treasure. This could be big. Azuta's Abundance. If you have, let's say at 5 mana, you have 3 differently named lands. I think it's pretty easy to have 4 differently named lands with 5 mana. 5 mana, draw 4, Tidings, or whatever it's called. That could be pretty good. And then later in the game, this draws you even more. I think if you're tap out control, you probably would still rather play Soul Confluence, but that's a compelling card. This could be annoying to be on the draw against this card. They just get to replace it pretty quickly, but they do have to invest mana into it, so it's probably not unfair. This counterspell, but if you have Civilized, you get to draw a card as well, which I think is fair. I feel like the rewards for Civilized are strong enough. Decadent Merchants is Sailor of Means, which sees play in Constructed, so seems like a fine design. Enchant non-camel creature. Alright. Then, okay, Ekabram, another god. As long as you draw your 3rd card each turn, you can transform it. This is a pretty strong thing, because it's a 1/4 that if you can attack into an empty board, you're getting a card. So I feel like control decks want to main deck this, and then if they happen to go against another control deck, just being able to attack with it. And it can attack into a lot of different things. Like, even if you're against aggro, you have no problem attacking them with this because they're not going to be able to kill it, generally. Of course, the real bonus on the other side is indestructible, but the other line, whenever it becomes untapped, draw a card. Whenever any creature you control becomes untapped, this kind of wants to be in a more creature-based deck, so maybe it's not control that really wants to be doing this. But I could see this being quite strong. Emissary of Dark Tides would help with Merfolk. Flash, you can return a tapped creature to its owner's hand or draw a card. Both of those are really appealing bonuses. I could see this see play outside of Merfolk, just because that's a really nice, I could see some kind of tempo control list that has Tiggle and this, and just playing some 2-power bodies with Flash that get you value of either drawing cards or stemming aggression or casting spells from your graveyard. The blue epic, let's say we cast this for 6 sorcery speed, you can get 6 power of flying, which is not nothing. You can draw 3 cards, which isn't great, but it's something. You could bounce their stuff, that's also really good. I feel like all the modes here have situations where they're really strong, and none of them feel very niche, like the self-bounce did on the white epic. I could see this being a strong card. This makes a treasure every turn, then if you have 15 non-land permanents, you win. Invoke the Ankylos. Look at the top 7. You can put a creature in the battlefield, exile a sorcery card. Oh. So you find a creature and play it, and whenever that creature deals damage to a player, you get to cast a copy of the spell. It's kind of a fun design, but probably too slow for constructed. Okay, so there are some land enchantments. I think I've just been breezing by them because they're obviously not for constructed. Okay, there's an extra turn card. What? Oh, until the end of your next turn. Look to the future. Okay, this could be strong. Negate, always good to have. Bounce non-land permanent and draw a card could be okay, but probably not making it. If there's an Artifact Matters deck, I could see this seeing play just to create more artifact triggers. Just creating treasure every time you cast an artifact. And getting more artifact triggers. Okay, this is another control finisher. I say another, but that's in the context of all the sets I'm looking at and already existing custard, not in the context of this set. Can't be countered, has evasion, has flash, and it even has hexproof if you've achieved civilization. So that's pretty sweet. Naga. Oh. 2 mana 1/3 helps you find an artifact or enchantment. Looking only at the top 3 is not great. I would want it to be 4. Because you'll miss a lot of times. Okay, a 2 mana draw card and get a treasure might be better than we think. Like this could be quite good. I don't know for sure, but as I was saying on the Heirloom set, you want to be very careful with granting treasure and or gold at 2 mana, particularly with other effects that aren't situational, but like you can always do them and always benefit from them, like drawing a card. So imagine this with um, rituals, all the red rituals that we have in Custard. I guess we only have one real one right now, but like being able to cycle cards and get more mana leads to play patterns that could easily create a broken deck. So this is, like, I'm not saying this card needs to be nerfed, but it's one that needs to be highlighted developmentally, and people need to be aware of it. Writing, 3 mana enchantment. You draw a card when you play it. You draw a card at the beginning of your next turn, so slow divination. But then your non-creature spells cost 1 less to cast. I could see this being good if the format's slow enough. Like maybe this is the enchantment that control decks want if they also want civilized. I don't think this is quite good enough. Behead. I think the aesthetics and flavor of the set are really good. This is interesting. You make him discard a card and you get, basically an arm token. Just a really basic equipment. But it's a way for, again, control decks to have artifacts. Although control decks don't want to spend a mana in a card just to make them discard a card generally. Alright, Planeswalker, Black Walker. I think this is getting a redesign, I'm not entirely sure. But the +1 and -3 are generic enough that I could see it seeing play. You get to pick between 2 cards for them to discard. The -3, you get to destroy a creature, make a treasure. We know from Vraska that can be quite good. The -6 is a bit more situational, but probably okay. And you can hit it fairly early. Considering it's a 5-mana walker, that's probably okay. Black. Alright, let's pretend 6 mana again. You can make him discard 4 cards. That actually can be really big, especially if you've gone first, or you've ritualed up with treasure or red rituals. Being able to wipe out their hand is really big. Returning creatures from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, 6 mana, draw 4 specific creatures from your graveyard can be good. Oh. Drain them 4. I would love this card for mono black control. I would absolutely love it. This can be a finisher, or it can wipe out their hand, or get you the blockers you need if you've already had to trade them against aggro. I really like this card a lot. Very appealing. This and the blue one, and I guess the white one was even pretty good too. So far, the epics and the gods all look sufficiently pushed to see play. Beginning of your upkeep. Okay, this is Civilized Bob, but it costs 3 mana. Alright, here's the Black God. I have some flavor text issues here. It is also missing a flavor bar, but that might be the template for transform cards. Anyway, a 2 mana 2/3 lifelink is great for black. Like, just ignore everything else about the card, and that's wonderful. It also allows you to exile creatures from your graveyard, and once you do that 4 times, you get a 4/5 indestructible lifelink. I think I'd prefer if that asked for 3 or more cards in exile. Like, it's going to be a long time, and you're going to need a lot of creatures in your graveyard for that to really activate. I could see this in a dredge-based deck. You hold it up as a blocker, and then you can start exiling creatures that you've been milling. 4 is just a lot, though. I think even 3 would be a lot, considering you have to wait a turn after playing it to even start doing that ability. So this is Thoughtseize, but an enchantment but you don't have to pay life. And it's situational, like if they remove your enchantment, then they get their card back. I could see this as maybe the enchantment that a black-based control deck might want if they want to achieve Civilized. Sorcery speed, destroy creature, but you get a treasure. I might see play. I think right now it's more important to have instant speed creature destruction because of Isemerge and the hasty threats in the red decks. I don't think that gets there, but I like the design. Salazar, Naga soldier. I don't see how he's a soldier. Yeah, I don't think that gets there. Black sweeper, -2/-2. I can see that being good. Solemn Judgment. Ah. You can get them to sacrifice half their creatures. They split, you choose. Probably not good enough. I could see that being 3 mana. Tradition, like not good enough for playing in Constructed, which is probably okay. Okay, so this is a black discovery, helps you self-mill, and then once it activates, you can play a card from your graveyard each turn. I like this design a lot. I'd enjoy it in, the decks that I like that are graveyard focused. Tyranny drains them. Then after draining a couple turns, you get to, draw cards. Is he eating the gold? That's a little weird. You get to draw cards and deals damage to you. So this either slowly deals damage to them or they discard their hand. What is probably going to happen with this is it'll deal, 3 damage to them, maybe 4, and then at that point they'll have no cards left in their hand. They'll just play everything out, and then they'll discard their hand of nothing. Okay, we're on to red. Alright, another 2 mana token maker. The Elemental Tribal can work with the Rakoa cards, which could be interesting. Hold on a second. I might have a work thing I need to look at real quick. Sorry about that. And apologies in advance for not editing these videos. I just don't have any expertise in that, and I'm not invested enough to figure that out. So I have to send a quick email. Okay, and that was it. I shouldn't have anything else right now. Okay, so this is 1 in a red to deal 3 damage to a creature, instant speed. Fills a hole in the format. It doesn't hit face, but it does if you sacrifice a creature and they have a creature that you want to kill. So it can give reach to those red decks. I think this would slot really well. It's not too... I feel like it's worse than Lightning Strike, and I think that's probably good. I think if we had straight up Lightning Strike in the format in addition to the red removal that's already there, it would be too much. Is this Scavenging Hyena from Hearthstone? Oh yeah, art credit. Hearthstone. Yeah. Okay. 4 mana Flying Haste. And whenever something else endures, you can return this tapped and attacking. Okay, I haven't seen a lot of constructed level endure stuff yet. Maybe once we get into green and multicolored, we'll see more. It just being a 4 mana 3/2 Flying Haste might be good enough for it to see play anyway. And then on the following turn, you can make it a 4/3 if you would really like. I think Screecher just sees play over it as long as Screecher's in the format. That's from Janata. Whoa! So this destroys any land, and you get to draw a card. But then they get to replace it with a different land. I could see this seeing play in sideboards against non-basic lands as just kind of a cycling card that can complicate their mana bases a little bit. And depending on your deck, maybe you could main deck it if like you really enjoy the cycling for some reason. Because even against mono red, you can still do it. You can still destroy their mountain. They'll find a mountain. You get your card. I don't think it's super likely, but it's a possibility. Alright, 2 mana, get a treasure token, and then you get a falling one on the next turn. So on turn 2, you play this. On turn 3, you have access to 5 mana. And that's why I'm worried about treasure. That doesn't feel especially red. Now we feel like I know red has rituals, but usually they have to be the same turn that you get that mana. And I know that they were kind of one of the big treasure colors in Ixalan, but yeesh, going from 2 mana to 5 mana on turn 3 is pretty big. I mean, you have to have your land drop on turn 3, but that is quite a bit. So I would definitely be watching this card to see if if this were to rotate in, I would try and break it immediately. Probably along with that blue draw card, create a treasure token, find some rituals, and then find, some kind of storm deck, or just like lots of big powerful things to do with 5-ish mana. That can ideally recoup the card disadvantage costs. Okay, the red. There's another 4 mana haste. I kind of dislike that this and the Phoenix both occupy that same spot. Of like, oh, my aggro deck wants a 4 mana hasty finisher. Well, here's 2 to choose from. It is still attacking after you transform it, I believe. And then you can gain control of your stuff, and it's indestructible. But you have to have 5 or more creatures. That's quite a hoop. I would look at maybe removing the haste so it doesn't design over the Phoenix, and maybe lowering the creature count requirement. And is this just Xena and her companion, her friend? I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've seen any of that. Okay, red epic. Let's pretend 6 mana. Creatures you control get +4/+0 until end of turn. That's pretty good. And I could see you casting this at 3 mana just for that effect if it helps you win the game, or 4 mana. 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So you could spend 5 mana to Arc Lightning them, including their planeswalkers. 6 mana, you can kill a planeswalker, generally. Or you can use it to discard cards from your hand and then draw cards. If you cast this for 4 mana and discard 2 cards, I mean, that's a really overly expensive Tormenting Voice. Yeah, I don't know. This one doesn't seem as strong. Like, I don't think this one would see play. It's a really difficult design space to have this much flexibility and have all of the modes all feel roughly equal in value. And I think Matt's done a really great job with them. And I think it's okay they're not all super push. Like, I think it's okay this one isn't as good as the others. Okay, other elementals have menace. This has menace. And then You can sacrifice your elementals, so I guess if you're doing token-based elementals, like that 1/1 token maker, you can get card advantage from it. That seems okay. This is a really fun sub-game. I like this. You create 2 treasures, but then they get it. I think it's kind of fun. Metallurgy. Okay, kind of aggro-focused. It's not good enough. I think it's more of a limited discovery. Pierce, this is sorcery speed shock, but it has scry 1, which is pretty good. So I guess this is really just cheaper magma spray, except sorcery speed. And I guess it's scry 1 instead of scry 2. I could definitely see playing this. If nothing else is, like if this came into Custard, I would run this along with Pillar of Flame and Calamit's Gaze and probably Phoenix Flames, and do a red burn deck with the Prowess creature from CC18. Yeah, so that could definitely see play. It has the issue of being yet another sorcery speed burn spell, when really we desperately want instant speed, which I think is what makes the other instant removal spell I talked about earlier appealing. But being able to deal damage to face or creature is kind of important. Like, I would kind of rather that this were instant speed, like if this were just shock, and then the other one were just the way it is, or, you know, we're a little better but at sorcery speed, like if it dealt 4 damage. Okay. Oh, so this is red shifted, gosh, I forget what it's called, but it's a black 1/1 uncommon. You can't block, but you sacrifice other creatures to put tokens on it. I've noticed several sets have had these 1-drops that work well with aristocrats. So this can potentially burn them out if you have a bunch of lands in your graveyard. But it costs 6 mana, so that's probably not great. Tormenting Voice, in case we are ever afraid of it rotating out of the format. If you can deal damage to them each turn, this can make a bunch of elementals. But at that point, I think it's probably better to just have the 2-drop Boiling Outflow, the black enchantment from Rakoa. This is a fun Endure card that probably doesn't make it. It's more elemental tribal. The amount of mana you spend on Endure allows you to make lots of attacking tokens. 5 mana, 4/4 Flying Haste. If we ever run out of hasty evasive top ends in Custard, this could potentially fill a spot in absence of anything much better, which I'm not convinced we'll have that problem. But oh, this ramps you 2 over 2 turns. Oh no, it only puts it into your hand. Alright, that's not very good. And then you can pay mana to gain life. Yeah, that probably doesn't get there. Okay, this is interesting. This is a lot like Machine Oracle from Metropolis. That's a 2/1, and it can tap for mana of any color, but only if you have Supremacy, if you have more life than an opponent. This is similar in that it's a 1-drop that can then become big and aggressive, but you have to pay mana for that. And then you've created a nice body which you can use to attack with or to add mana. So it's like a situational mana drop that can also be used aggressively. It doesn't truly become a mana drop until like not a mana drop, a mana dork until about turn 3. So it feels pretty safe and appealing. I like that design. This helps you find a land. It's like Abundant Growth, except probably a little better fix. Still only finds a land instead of you just drawing a card, as well as fixing your mana at the same time. Crop Flattener gets +1/+1 for each land card in your graveyard. and you can sacrifice lands to draw cards. This is a really fun card. I like the design a lot. It's probably not going to be strong enough for custom standard, but I think it's a great design. Alright, Green Epic. Cast this for 6 mana. You can put 4 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. You can find 2 lands. Oh, no. You can't cast this for 6 mana. We're talking 5 mana. For 5 mana, you can put 4 +1/+1 counters on something. That's not nothing. 5 mana, you can ramp twice, destroy 2 artifacts or enchantments. I think this is slightly stronger than the red one, but probably not as strong as the blue or black ones. It's a human druid that creates a white sheep creature token. This would see play. I mean, this would be good with Grizzly Amalgam because it creates 2 creatures you can sacrifice. And it can also fix your mana a bit. But it'd also be good in Motley Crew because it creates 2 different creature types on 1 creature. Motley Crew is a card in Metropolis that wants you to have many creatures with differing creature types. Husbandry I like a lot. It's 2 beast tokens for 4 mana. And then, it also allows your defenders to be able to attack however they wish. So if you build this with other defenders, like some big fat blue or white walls, like the blue one in Vestum, that's a 1 in a blue 0/4 defender. When it enters play, draw a card. That would be really strong with this, and it's strong on its own. Vestum's not in custom standard right now, though, of course. Also, you could also just play Garrick and get several beast tokens and ramp. And that's the real problem, is that at the 4 mana slot, it has to be better than Garrick, and many times it's difficult to achieve that. 5 mana 3/3, it ramps you. Then if you have 6 or more differently named lands, and it becomes a 6/6 indestructible. So in the deck that plays this is probably just 5 mana 6/6 indestructible. Which means exile, like all these gods seem playable enough that exile removal is going to be really important. And then your next turn you can get an additional 6/6. This is very strong. This allows those decks like Landslide that have a lot of differently named lands. This gives them a way to close the game out pretty fast. Yeah, this is a very solid mid-range card. Lose, competing against Garrick, 4 mana, 3 loyalty, and I just don't think it's good enough. It can remove something, kind of, if you want to spend 4 mana. Like, you could remove a 2-drop with 2 power and have it survive. Or, +2 and gain some life and maybe draw a card when they attack it. I don't know. Into an empty board, it gets to an ultimate pretty fast. And then the ultimate's really strong, but I don't think it's quite good enough. If it shares no creature types with other creatures you control, draw a card. Mythology. Okay, so this lets you 6 mana. You get some card advantage of any kind of permanent with some card selection, top 4 cards. And then once you discover it, you can start putting permanent cards from your hand just onto the battlefield without having to pay for them. So this is a card for a really big deck that has lots of really big appealing permanents. I see this being really great in ECH, and a fun thing to ramp too. If you have lots of other ramp targets, this helps you kind of start, once you've ramped up, playing multiple ramp targets at in the same turn, and also finding them. That can be an issue with ramp decks, is you get the sequencing wrong. You start with your ramp targets and you don't find your ramp cards, or you are drawing nothing but ramp cards, and so you have all this mana but you can't find your payoffs. Cards like this help you get high concentrations of payoffs when you have the mana for it. 5 mana, 6/6 trample. As long as it's attacking, other attacking creatures you control can't be blocked unless this is also blocked. So this always has to be blocked, basically, or else they're just not blocking anything. Oh, Giant Spider has gotten better. Seven mana, 7/7. You can endure for 8 mana, and when you endure, you make a copy of it. That's kind of cool. It's a towering Hydra. It's like a mix of a Hydra and a giraffe. That's beautiful. That's just lovely. It's not seen play, but it's really funny. Does this see play in Boggles? No, it's too slow. Three mana, 3/4 is a good rate, and giving it the ability to get a little bit bigger and gain indestructible that turn. This could see play in a green Stompy deck, or a red-green Stompy. World Tender can be really big if you have a bunch of differently named lands. Anku the Primordial. I like its effect. 6 mana, 5/7, indestructible. I don't think that's good enough for constructed. I don't know. Like, maybe Jund plays this. It's hard to remove, and then it gets a lot of value when it attacks. Borsupa Chieftain. This is definitely an aggressive body for a 3-drop, and it allows you to endure forever, so you can always keep making it bigger and bigger. Okay, so I sense a theme of differently named lands, which I think fits the set well. And we've seen that play well with the villain's land. Could this see play in like a 3-color flash deck? I don't know. I could see you often casting this around turn 3 or 4 as a 3/3 flash for 2 mana, which is okay. And then sometimes a 4/4. When you create it, it's not static, right? Or, I mean, once you cast it, it snapshots the number of differently named lands you have, and that's how it is. It doesn't fluctuate, so like each time you play a new land, it doesn't get bigger. I assume that's how it works. Deathpit's Champion seems very pushed to me. If you even just ignore the top ability, the bottom ability is really, really good. A 3/2 that you can sacrifice things to put counters on it is really good. Yeah. Aristocrats decks don't really have red right now, and I appreciate that the other Aristocrats card I saw that was a 1 mana um, was red, and so I could see this creating maybe red, black, white Aristocrats once again. Huh, Destiny Forsaken. This is interesting. So if she this is a weird card to run in Constructed, because you have to rely on them killing one of your creatures, and then you wanting to deal damage to all their creatures and to the opponent. Oh, this is black-green removal. If you've got counters on your stuff, you can give -5, -5. Otherwise, -3 at instant speed is pretty good. 3/2 trample for 2 is pretty good. And then at 4 mana, you can put 2 counters on it. If you do this with the white counters matter cards that we're looking at early on, do a kind of a Naya counters deck. This has just some really good synergy with that. I wonder if this is worth ramping to and having in like a big mid-range deck. Something that removes stuff on ETB and also can win the game. It's pretty good. Alright, the last epic, Epic of Anku. We can't do it for 6, but we can do it for 7. So let's say that. We can deal, for 7 mana, we can deal 4 damage to each creature and draw 3 cards. That's good. We can, for 7 mana, draw 6 cards and lose 6 life. Probably don't want to do that. You can return, wow. For 7 mana, you can reanimate twice. Does Jund want this? Well, for 5 mana, you can deal 4 damage to everything. That's a good tool to have. Or you can pay 5 mana to draw 3 cards and take 3 damage. That isn't always good. Or 5 mana to reanimate something. Yeah, I could see that. Generally used for its 5 mana mode, but it's 7 mana. It's, you know, it could also be quite good if you happen to have that mana. 9 mana, I guess it doesn't scale up really well because you don't, the mode that scales up the best, drawing 3 cards, you don't want to be taking 9 damage as you do that. Reanimating 3 things, but that requires you to have been 3 things worth reanimating. So this probably sees play mostly when you choose 1 and you cast this for 5 mana, but I could still see it seeing play at that point. 4 mana, 3/3 menace. Huh. Your opponent can keep you off drawing cards if they're willing to pay 6 life each turn. Otherwise, you start to draw 2 cards a turn. I could see that seeing play in a blue-black tempo deck. You can 6 mana, 4/5 flying that lets you find a card. It's okay. Law. Okay, you can start bouncing their creatures. And then they enter tapped. Then turn off haste. It's probably too slow against red-based aggro. Trample haste. Yeah, a little situational on that one. Shalana, I know, is getting some tweaks, but she has a potential to be a really strong card for red-based aggro. Just an excellent 2-drop to replace the demon that it's currently using at 2 mana that disrupts non-basic lands. It just gives a lot of potential options on the backside. The transform trigger is a little awkward. 7 mana, each opponent sacrifices a creature. But then you can reanimate something. I see why this costs 7 mana. Stolen Innovations. Huh. This is an interesting top-down design. Probably too situational to see play because they have to have a non-land card worth copying. This would be interesting out of the sideboard against other aggro decks if you're a red-white aggro. Because because it starts dealing damage to them, but because it says lifelink, you're also gaining life. This is a fun red-white design. Taxation. You tax them, and then you get menacing advisors after that. That's kind of fun. Again, I don't know if it's quite good enough. It doesn't do anything for too long, but that's kind of cool. Now, this is going to sound silly, but what if you cast Reemergence on this? You send it attacking, and then you play your land drop afterwards to make a copy of it. I don't know. That is a little silly. There's probably much better ways to play Reemergence. Reemergence will always be a pretty silly card. I think that's really the lesson that we can learn. Alright, Devotion is interesting. It creates basically another sword. It's a sword that when it enters play, you create a token that is the other legendary sword that goes with it, which is hard to sell with the art and flavor. It doesn't quite come through, but it's kind of fun. It's a way to make a couple of artifacts. Some vehicles. 4 mana, 3/4 lifelink crew too. That's actually really strong for limited. So this lets you loot for 1 and, tapping it. And then after a while, you can sacrifice this and you get the cards that you've been looting out of your hand. You get them back. I could see this seeing play in constructed decks that want civilized. Just having that card selection and eventually getting all those cards back could be really big. Halls of the Divine, you can have your creatures put bricks on this. And then once there's 6 bricks on it, creatures get +2/+2. Huh. Maybe that could see play, but in the decks that want big anthems, you want to be using your creatures to attack, not necessarily to be building the Halls of the Divine, building up your anthem. But, I mean, the Convoke decks in Standard right now are kind of similar in that some turns you do want to tap them all to get a big reward for them later. So that's an interesting tension. I like the design. Wow, 3 mana, 5/4 Vigilance. Crew 3. Crew 3 is a big cost. But you can also just use this to draw cards. Alright, here's an arc. So you crew the arc, and then you get copies of it, because they filed in 2x2. And that's really funny. That's a funny top-down design. I like it. Okay, so the allied land cycle, they enter tapped, and they have abilities that you can get by sacrificing the land. I think you have to be careful when you have lands that you sacrifice for abilities, because often they can just feel like free spells with little opportunity cost, but you are losing a land, and you do have to be in the colors, and it enters tapped, so it's not going to be too fast. Draining for 2 feels very weird in a red-green card. Like that could easily be black-white, or just black, or white-red. I don't know. It's just weird that red-green. I guess conceivably you can do it because red deals damage to opponents and green can gain life. But the package together doesn't feel red-green. I'm sacrificing this to get some bodies. I think that's fine. Ramping a little bit more. That seems okay. 3 and tap that to get a treasure. Is that too good? I guess not. I could see it seeing play. just as a one of, as a kind of a grindy value land, if you have things to do with the artifacts, or if you want the fixing. Center of Culture is a really cool design. It's a good payoff for Civilized. Um, Generally, your lands adding extra mana is best earlier in the game, so it's going to be hard for this to really be abused, but it will still feel good once you activate it. This lets you get a card back from your graveyard as long as it's not a creature or a land. So basically you're getting a spell, or an enchantment or artifact. Yeah, I could see that seeing play as a one of or something. Then Evolving Wild's always good to have. Herdsman's Path, you can get sheep, and then sacrifice sheep to get cards later. This one lets you find an artifact or enchantment, but only out of the top 4 cards, so you have to hope you hit. Otherwise you just spent 5 mana and sacrificed a land for nothing. Oh, if it's enchanted. Okay. Then Rapture Spire. Alright, so that's been Scriptures of Urshad. A lot of really interesting designs. I think the set has obviously been well thought through. Very appealing. I like the epics. The gods might be a little pushed. I'm not entirely sure if they're too strong or not, but they're certainly appealing. Civilized could be a really interesting constructed mechanic. Um, definitely a great set by Matt. So thanks to him for submitting it, and thank you all for watching this video. Hopefully it was informative and useful for you. I have one more video to do, which is Vastum, and then maybe I don't think I'll do a video for Metropolis. I already did a short one for that, and because it's my own set, it's, I guess, a little weird to review my own set. Um, Although I do think it's excellent, and I encourage you all to look at it and vote for it. But I might do a video just detailing how I'm going to be voting. Feel free to comment in the comments of this video or on the Discord if you disagree or agree or think I missed something. But thanks again for watching.